blue and red stutter across the ceiling as the gurney shivers under me, a cold strap pressing the breath flat against my ribs. Someone says, "Stay with me," and a gloved hand finds my wrist, as if my pulse might try to escape. My name is Mara Ellison, and I didn't lose my voice tonight. I chose to stop giving it away. The ambulance turns. Glass chimes in my head, falling stars from a chandelier. I can still taste the microphone the way metal smells when a storm is about to break. 20 minutes ago, 100 eyes waited for me to play the part. Smile, present the keys, prove I understand my place. I finally let the silence perform instead. "Can you tell me what hurts?" the medic asks. The side of my face burns. My scalp prickles where fingers were not gentle. I blink up at the lights and count them like mile markers out of a town that never saw me. I know the story they will tell, that I fainted, that girls are fragile when families celebrate boys. The strap tightens. I breathe into it until the panic folds. Lakefield recedes behind the windows, neat hedges, and perfect driveways, slipping backward like a brochure closing. I hear the medic again, softer. "Mara, did someone do this to you?" The word "someone" floats like bait in clear water. I swallow, taste copper, and answer without raising my voice. "Yes." He waits. The siren lifts. I let the next words fall into the space where my fear used to live. It wasn't a stranger. The hand on my wrist steadies. The gurney locks. Above me, ceiling light becomes a white moon. I hold it with my eyes and decide this time my quiet will be the loudest thing in the room. They call Lakefield peaceful flags, never-fading lawns so neat they look ironed at sunrise. People wave praise hydrangeas, and repeat "family comes first," like gospel. I once believed it meant love. In our house it meant obedience, long before ambulances and spinning lights. I was in that same kitchen sunlight, polishing the marble my mother adored more than honesty. She hummed as she wiped fingerprints, not with joy, but with warning. "Don't forget Dylan's uniform," she murmured. I placed the perfectly folded jersey down, pulse still racing from my bookstore shift. She didn't notice, she only saw what Dylan wore, never who washed it. My father worshipped silence. His footsteps always landed before his voice, low, commanding, expecting compliance. "We present a united front," he'd say, without looking up. "Appearance is gratitude." I thought he meant gratitude for life. He meant gratitude for him. So I became invisible infrastructure. The good daughter who anticipated needs spoke softly and held the frame steady so they could smile in front of it. While Dylan exploded through the door with friends and privilege tossing gear like confetti, I folded towels and finished homework in the same breath. No one asked about my shifts. They asked if the silver was polished. Even then, the walls felt like they were memorizing me. I didn't yet realize I was already planning my escape, just that every spotless counter shined with proof no one saw me. Money in our house didn't speak in numbers. It spoke in duty. Be reasonable, don't be selfish. Dylan never worried. Entitlement was his native language. I saved quietly, hoarding crumpled bills like oxygen hidden in books taped under a drawer, slow but mine. Then came the trust fund, a letter soft as a hand on my shoulder. For Mara. For her future. My grandfather's gentleness felt almost mythical. I didn't tell my parents. I wasn't handing them my lifeline. Mrs. Patel slipped me an article recognizing financial control in families. "College is a window, not a cage," she said. At home, my father preached sacrifice for our best investment, never glancing at me when he said we. That night, I opened a bank account 2 towns over and memorized the balance like scripture. Freedom counted in small numbers is still freedom. Conversations turned into strategy briefings. My mother offered chamomile and a rehearsed smile. "His future is our responsibility." My father followed with talk of paperwork and managing things for you. They called it guidance. It felt like claiming a deed. I nodded the way they trained me to letting silence sharpen. Quiet isn't surrender, it's leverage. I gathered supplies, tucked documents in the library, bought a prepaid phone. Dylan bragged about campus tours. My mother laughed too brightly. My father poured another drink. I folded napkins with steady hands, already picturing the little apartment on Maple Street. Later in my notebook, one sentence weighted like a key. "I won't finance the throne they built on my back." The morning of Dylan's birthday looked like every magazine cover my mother worshipped. White balloons dripping in gold ribbon chairs tied with ivory bows, crystal glasses lined like soldiers on the patio. From the outside, we were the Ellisons' curated, successful, gracious. On the inside, we were a stage play one I was no longer willing to perform. I moved through the kitchen quietly, plating hors d'oeuvres I didn't choose and arranging napkins I didn't buy. My mother floated around me like a queen polishing her crown. "Smile today," she murmured, tightening the cuff of her pearl bracelet. "It's important." She didn't say for whom. She didn't have to. In our house, important meant Dylan. Outside, guests arrived in linen and laughter, praising the decor, praising the weather, praising my brother, as if success was already stitched into his skin. Dylan stood near the pool in a tailored polo, shaking hands with fathers who wanted their sons to shine like him. Big day one of them grinned. "Heard there's a special surprise." Dylan smirked, glancing at me like I was the bow on his gift. My father tapped a spoon against his champagne flute, commanding silence with practiced ease. "We're here to celebrate our exceptional son," he began, his voice spreading across the yard like lacquer. Compliments flowed, applause bubbled, and pride rose like steam. Then his hand lifted toward me. "And today, his sister has something very meaningful to present." The guests turned. My mother's nails pressed into my arm, a reminder disguised as affection. Dylan's grin sharpened, ready to receive what he believed he deserved. A hush settled thick enough to choke on. I walked forward, fingers steady, despite the tremor in my bones. I felt the microphone's metal chill before I spoke, the world narrowing to a single breath. "There is no car," I said. Gasps cracked across the lawn. Dylan blinked once, twice, as if reality had malfunctioned. My father's smile collapsed. My mother's face drained to porcelain. "The trust is mine," I continued, voice calm as glass. "Not a reward for him, not a prop for a photo. My future isn't a family project." For the first time in 18 years, the perfect yard fell silent for me, not because I disappeared into it, but because I refused to. Silence didn't stay long. It snapped like a bone. My father moved first, the way storms break branches before rain even hits. His hand struck my cheek with a crack sharp enough to freeze the air. I didn't fall. Shock can hold a body upright longer than pride ever could. My skin burned, my ears rang. The pool lights shimmered like water didn't know whether to ripple or drown. My mother lurched forward, fingers clawing into my hair, jaw trembling with humiliation rather than horror. "Mara," she hissed, breath hot against my ear. "You are ruining everything. Apologize. Now." Her voice wasn't a mother's voice. It was a publicist's panic. Dylan scoffed loud enough for guests to hear, arms crossed like a prince, inconvenienced by a peasant revolt. "You're pathetic," he spat. "This was supposed to be about me." It always was. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. My voice had done enough, so I stood still, letting their fury expose them. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else gasped, a sound sharp and human in a crowd used to pretending perfection. Then Mrs. Shaw moved through the shock like an answer to a prayer I never dared to pray. "Stop," she commanded, stepping between my mother and me. Her voice was crisp, steady, the voice of someone who'd seen real emergencies and refused to mistake pride for survival. "Someone call 911. My father's hand hovered mid-air, unsure whether to strike again or salvage dignity. My mother's grip faltered. Dylan's smirk thinned to fear. That was the first moment I saw it, not guilt, not regret, fear of consequence. The kind that only arrives when reality finally knocks louder than denial. I swayed. The world tilted. The tiles beneath my feet turned to water. Someone caught my shoulder. Not family, not blood. Someone who didn't owe me anything except human decency. A voice near my ear whispered, "It's okay. Stay with me." The sirens arrived fast. EMTs moved like certainty, firm and practiced. Hands lifted me onto a stretcher. Someone asked if I knew where I was. I nodded once, tasting copper and clarity. As the ambulance doors closed, I saw my mother's mouth moving, forming excuses instead of concern. My father's jaw clenched like he wanted to rewrite reality. Dylan's hands shook, not for me, but for the life he believed was guaranteed. I wasn't leaving them. I was finally leaving for me. The hospital ceiling was softer than the one at home. It didn't expect anything from me. It just existed quiet and white, humming with machines that cared more about oxygen than reputation. A nurse spoke gently while checking my vitals, as if the world hadn't just split open in my parents' backyard. "You're safe now," she said. It felt strange hearing safety instead of performing it. Officer Morales arrived not long after her uniform neat, her expression steady, in a way that told me she'd witnessed both cruelty and resilience more times than she cared to count. She pulled up a chair notepad resting loosely in her lap, not like a threat, but an invitation. "Mara," she asked, voice low enough to protect the moment, "tell me what happened at the party." For the first time, I said it without shrinking. "They hit me," I answered. "They tried to drag me. They wanted my trust fund. They wanted me quiet." Not a quiver, not an apology for existing, just truth. She nodded like she already knew how these stories go in towns like ours, where image wears a crown sharper than any thorn. "We'll process an emergency protective order tonight," she said. "You won't go back there unless you choose to." Choice. The word felt like a door swinging open. Then came Ana Ruiz, the social worker, efficient and warm in equal measure. She laid paperwork on a small rolling table, housing resources, legal steps, trauma support. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just the structure of a life I was building now, brick by deliberate brick. "You don't need to do everything tonight," she said. "You just need to do the next right thing for you." Later, Mr. Keene arrived my grandfather's lawyer silver hair, catching the fluorescent light, like memory made solid. He reviewed the trust-verified activation under hardship terms and placed a new card and documents beside my hospital bed. "Your grandfather believed in your independence," he said quietly. "Now it's time for you to use it." I didn't cry. Not then. Freedom doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it arrives in paperwork and plastic hospital bracelets. I signed where they pointed each stroke of ink carving distance between who I had been and who I was choosing to become. When dawn filtered through the blinds, pale and undecorated, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not fear, not defiance. It was room to breathe. I left the hospital with a bag too light to represent a life I'd spent years carrying. Inside a folded discharge paper, a prepaid phone, the trust documents, and a toothbrush, the nurse slipped in with a soft smile. Outside, the morning air tasted unedited, crisp, ordinary real. Officer Morales stood by her car waiting to escort me to collect my things. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded because the truth was simpler than fear. I wasn't going home. I was retrieving what belonged to me before stepping into somewhere new. The Ellison house looked the same as always, symmetrical hedges, flawless, siding, a porch wreath, seasonal enough to be smug. But the silence around it was different. No guests, no applause, just tension waiting like breath held too long. My parents stood in the foyer when we walked in, Officer Morales beside me. My mother's hands twisted a dish towel. My father's tie was gone, shirt sleeves rolled as if he'd been pacing. Dylan lingered behind them, a shadow cut from privilege and panic. "You didn't have to do this," my mother whispered. It wasn't an apology. It was a complaint, dressed in trembling lace. My father tried next, voice low with a wounded authority. "We could have handled this privately." I opened a closet door and pulled out my duffel bag. "You had 18 years to handle it privately," I said. "You chose control. I'm choosing me." Dylan took a step forward, jaw sharp with disbelief. "So what, you're just done with us?" I zipped my bag steady. "You were done with me the moment I stopped being useful. No shouting, no final blow. Just truth placed gently on a table they never let me sit at." Officer Morales waited while I gathered the last pieces of myself, my sneakers, a sweater, the bookmark my grandfather carved shaped like a small wing. Freedom doesn't roar. Sometimes it walks quietly through the front door and doesn't look back. Outside, the cruiser door shut with a soft click that sounded like closure. The sun climbed higher, washing the street in a plain, honest light. And somewhere between the driveway and the horizon, I felt the simplest victory, not escape, but arrival. For the first time, my life wasn't something to endure. It was mine to live.